Hello? Who's there?
Not you.
What do you want?
Want you.
Stay back!
Come closer.
Good evening, everybody. On tonight's horror story, we'll be talking about the two most horrific hiking adventures. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe, because it means a lot. Let's get straight into it. By the time you read this, the sun is probably up. That helps. Everything I'm about to tell you is worse in the dark. I've worked search and rescue in the mountains for 11 years. Weekends, holidays, 3 a.m. snowstorms. Whenever someone goes missing or panics and hits that SOS button, my radio crackles and I lace my boots. Most of the calls are normal. Twisted ankles, people who underestimated distance or daylight, couples fighting and splitting up on the trail, drunk campers. Most. But there are 5 calls, 5 encounters I cannot explain. They're why I started writing this down. Because when I try to sleep, I see them in the backs of my eyelids, like after images from staring at the sun too long. Hiking forums call them disturbing encounters or glitch in the matrix hikes, or that one time I almost died. They're more than that. Think of this like a list. If that makes it easier, the top 5 most disturbing hiking encounters I've ever seen. They're all real. They all happened within 100 miles of each other. And lately, I've started to suspect they're connected. This is the echo that answered wrong. We got the call just after midnight. Solo hiker, female, late 20s. Her emergency beacon pinged from the Slot Canyon system on the east side of the range. She'd sent a short text through the satellite unit. I think someone's down here with me. They keep repeating me wrong. The word wrong. Was that stuck with me, even over the radio? The canyon she'd gone into is popular. Early in the day, lots of Instagram people, tripods and floppy hats. But at night, it turns into a wound in the earth. The walls squeeze inward until the backpack scrapes on both sides. Sound gets strange in there. Every step you take comes back to you a second later, like the world is reconsidering you. We hiked in with headlamps and helmets, radios murmuring in that half whisper SAR people use when they're pretending they're not nervous. Copy last. I muttered, ducking under an overhang slick with condensation. My breath puffed white in the cold air. Her signal hasn't moved in 30 minutes, Commander replied. Last text was 20 minutes ago. Battery down to 8%. No new messages. We found her about an half hour later, standing stock still in a slot no wider than a doorway. Her body turned toward the wall. For a second, I thought she was talking to someone. Her lips were moving, very slowly. "Who's down here with me?" she whispered. We stopped a few yards behind her, and my teammate Lena said gently, "Hey, yes they are. We're here to help you." The woman did not turn around. Her shoulders trembled. "Who's down here with me?" she said again, slightly louder. And then from deeper in the canyon, maybe 20, 30 feet ahead, where the darkness thickened, something answered. Not like an echo, not like the same voice bouncing back. The words were slightly off, like a recording played at the wrong speed. "Who's down there without me?" It wasn't our hiker's voice. It was flatter, stretched, too calm. Lena's hand shot out and gripped my sleeve. I did the first dumb thing that came into my head. I cupped my hand and yelled, "Hello? This is search and rescue. Call out if you need assistance." Silence soaked through the stone. Then, "This is search and you. Call out it. You need us instead." The cadence was all wrong. The words didn't bounce back right. They didn't even match. The woman finally turned to us. Her pupils were blown wide. Her face streaked with dried tears and canyon dust. "You hear it?" she whispered. "You hear how it changed?" She had started talking to herself, to stay calm when the sun went down. A normal thing. She'd asked herself questions, making dumb jokes. But each time, the echo came back. Different. A few new words. A swapped pronoun. Then entire sentences she hadn't said at all. "Why didn't you keep moving?" I asked as gently as I could, while Lena checked her vitals. "Because," the woman said, voice shaking, "it asked me to." The next echo had said, "Stop. Don't move. You'll scare it." We escorted her out. I forced myself not to look back down at the canyon. Later, at home, I tried it myself. Whispered the words she claimed she said first. "Is anyone down here with me?" I closed my eyes and imagined the stone answering. "Is anyone down here with me?" There are natural explanations. Acoustic anomalies. Pareidolia. Stress. You hear what you expect to hear. That's what I tell people. I never tell them that when we pull the GPS track from her watch, we saw that she'd walked in a straight line for 8 miles, then stopped for almost 2 hours before sending the SOS. And in that stopped section, the track zigzagged back and forth in a tiny area, as if she'd been pacing, talking to the wall, taking turns speaking. That was the echo that answered wrong. The first story. If you made it this far, please like the video and subscribe. Let's continue. This is The Man on the Switchbacks. The second one didn't start as a rescue. It was just me, off duty, out for a sunset hike on the West Ridge Trail. Switchbacks up, switchbacks down. Classic grind, long views of the valley. About 2 miles from the trailhead, I passed a guy coming down. He was wearing old school gear, faded red windbreaker, external frame packs, scuffed leather boots, mid-40s, maybe. Beard more grey than black. Nothing unusual, except for a particular stillness in his face, like a photograph that hasn't fully loaded. We did the hike or not. "How's the trail up top?" I asked, out of habit. He smiled, late, like he had to remember how. "Clear," he said, "worth it." His teeth were very white and very even. For some reason, that's what I remember. I kept going. My brain filed him away. Guy headed down. Noted and forgotten. By the time I reached the line, the sun was bleeding orange along the horizon. The wind smelled like cold iron. I didn't stay long. I've seen that view 100 times. On the way back down, my legs started to get that pleasant burn, the I've earned my dinner feeling. I turned one tight switchback, and there he was again. Same red windbreaker, same beard, same not quite right smile. Coming toward me from below. I slowed automatically, confusion prickling. I hadn't seen any spur trails, no other ridges feeding into this one, and he was definitely descending when I first passed him. His poles had been angled downhill, his pack straps hung loose, like you do when gravity is helping. Now he was angled uphill, windbreaker zipped, no poles. We did the hiker nod again, closer this time. Close enough for me to smell his aftershave, sharp and clean in the dirt and pine air. How's the trail up top? He asked. Same words, same cadence, as if he were trying them out. My mouth went dry. Fine, I said slowly, little windy. Worth it? He asked. Yeah, I said. Worth it. His smile stretched too wide for a moment, then snapped back into place, like someone pulling a rubber band. We passed each other. Every instinct I had screamed to turn and look back, to make sure he was real, solid, still there. I didn't. Instead, I picked up my pace, nearly jogging the next two switchbacks. My heart thudded against my ribs in that way I know too well. The edge of panic, where you find yourself listening too hard for footsteps behind you. I turned the next switchback and almost collided with him. He was right there in front of me again. Red windbreaker, bare hands, no pack at all this time. Up close, his eyes were wrong. Not the colour, just the way they moved. They didn't quite track my face. They slid a fraction of a second behind, where they should, as if seeing me through a delay. How's the trail up top? He asked. His voice was flatter now, words spaced out, like a kid learning a new language. I took a step back. You okay, man? I heard myself say. You lost? His head tilted to one side, just a little too far. A curious dog. Okay, man, he repeated. You lost. The valley had gone strangely quiet. No birds, no insects, just the soft rasp of his breath. I did turn then. I couldn't help it. I looked past him, down the trail I'd just come. 4 switchbacks below us, tiny against the slope. I saw another flash of red. A figure moving slowly, steadily down toward the trailhead. Same jacket, same stride. My stomach lurched. When I looked back, the man in front of me was grinning. It looked painful, like the skin of his face hadn't been built for that expression. Worth it, he said. His breath smelled wrong too. Not rotten, not alcoholic, just unused, like air from a tire. I stepped around him without another word. He didn't move to stop me. He just pivoted slowly, as if his feet were stuck to the dirt, turning to watch me go. I didn't run. Running can trigger the wrong kind of chase, even from people who were just unwell. But I didn't slow down either, until I was at the trailhead, lungs burning, sweat chilling under my shirt, despite the evening warmth. I turned once more to look up at the slope. Far above, at the very top of the switchbacks, something red glowed faintly in the dying light. A week later, a caller came in to search and rescue. Missing hiker. Male. Mid-40s. Red jacket. Last seen 4 months earlier. His car had finally been ticketed, then towed. The family put things together. We found the remains 2 miles off the main trail, down in a steep ravine, where he'd slipped on loose scree, broken neck. Most likely, animals had done what animals do. His windbreaker had faded to a dull pink, sun-bleached and tattered. When I rolled him up gently to check his pockets, his teeth stared up at me. They were crooked, several chipped. Nothing like the perfect white smile I can't forget. The official line. Stress, dusk paranoia, a mind primed by too many ghost stories. But in my notebook, in my own handwriting, I've summarized that day with 4 words. Something was learning how. that is the end of the second story, The Man on the Switchbacks. If you'd like to hear story 3, 4 and 5, stay tuned for part 2. And once again, if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel as it helps a lot. Good night, everybody. Let me tell you guys a story that happened last summer. Something that I still don't understand. I've never been the kind of person to believe in ghost stories. Growing up, I was the one who laughed when people claimed they heard whispers in the woods or saw eyes glinting in the dark. But after what happened last summer, I don't laugh anymore, and I haven't been camping since. It started with a group chat. Me, my best friend Evan, his girlfriend Mia, and my cousin Tyler. We'd all been talking about getting out of town for a few days, something off-grid. No cell service, no work calls, no social media, just the four of us. A tent, a campfire, and the stars. Evan found the place. He says his uncle has mentioned an old campsite deep in the Whistler Pines forest, a few miles past the last ranger station. Apparently it wasn't on most maps anymore. The trails were overgrown, and the park had stopped maintaining it years ago, after a string of accidents. He said that part with air quotes. We all laughed, but looking back, I should have paid more attention. We loaded up on Friday afternoon, 2 tents, enough food for the weekend, a cooler of cheap beer, and a Bluetooth speaker that barely held a charge. It was supposed to be one of those classic summer trips. A few stories, a few laughs, maybe a dip in the lake, nothing more. The drive took almost 5 hours. By the time we reached the gravel road leading into the forest, the sun was already bleeding orange through the trees. The GPS had long since lost signal, and the path ahead looked barely wide enough for the car. Branches scraped along the windows to sound like fingernails across the glass. At one point, we even joked about turning back, but Evan insisted we were close. Finally, we reached a small clearing, a wide patch of grass surrounded by towering pines that seemed to swallow the last bite of daylight. It was quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual chirping of crickets and birds seemed muted, but we shrugged it off. It had been a long drive and we were exhausted. We set up camp, got a small fire going, and cracked open the beers. Tyler started telling ghost stories, the kind you'd hear around any campfire. A woman in white, a car crash, the sound of knocking at your tent at night. They were good for a laugh, until Mia said something that made us all pause. She said, "You know what's weird? There aren't any stars." We all looked up, and she was right. The sky should have been full of them. We were miles from the city, but it was just black, like a sheet pulled tight across the sky. No stars, no moon, nothing. Evan said maybe it was cloud cover, but when I looked around, I couldn't see a single cloud, just this deep, unnatural darkness that seemed to press against the edge of clearing. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I woke up to go to the bathroom. I stepped out of the tent, flashlight in hand, and froze. There was someone standing at the tree line. At first, I thought it was Tyler messing with me. He had a habit of doing that. But the figure was too tall. Its shoulders were too narrow. And it wasn't moving. Just standing there, watching. I called out softly. "Hey, Tyler, quit screwing around." No answer. The figure shifted slightly, and I swear even from across the clearing, I could hear the sound of its breath, slow, wet, like it was struggling to inhale. Then before I could react, my flashlight flickered and went out. When I got it back on, the figure was gone. I scanned the trees, the grass, the tent. Nothing. Just silence. I told myself it was my imagination. It had to be. But when I crawled back into the tent, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. There were wet footprints, leading from the flap of the tent to where I'd been lying. And they weren't mine. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still see that shape in the trees. Tall, still, like a shadow that forgot to move when the light changed. I didn't tell the others right away. I didn't want to sound paranoid. We were miles from civilization, and I figured if I said I saw someone in the woods, the trip would be over before it began. When morning came, it was like the forest was pretending nothing happened. The air was crisp, the sunlight filtered through the pines, and the birds were actually chirping again. For a second, I wondered if I'd just dreamed the whole thing. But then I noticed something. The footprints were off. Not just dried up or smudged. Gone. Like they'd never been there at all. Tyler was making coffee on the camp stove while Mia brushed her hair, still half asleep. Evan was unpacking his fishing gear, ready to hit the lake. I decided to keep my mouth shut. Maybe I'd imagined it after all. We spent most of the day hiking around the area. The trail were barely there, just faint paths winding between the trees that all looked the same. At one point, we found an old wooden sign half rotted and lying in the dirt. You could still make out the words burned into it. Whistler Pines Public Campground. Closed. The closed part had been carved in deep, like someone wanted to make sure nobody missed it. Tyler joked that maybe it was closed because the bears were unionizing. We laughed, but something about that sign stuck in my mind. The wood around it looked burned, like it had been part of the fire for a long time ago. And the air around that area felt colder, heavier somehow, like the sun didn't reach that part of the forest anymore. That night, we made dinner over the fire, instant noodles and hot dogs. Mia put on the same music through the tiny Bluetooth speaker, and we tried to make the best of it. For a few hours, it actually felt normal. We were laughing, drinking, swapping stories until the fire started to die down. And Tyler asked, "Did any of you hear that?" We went quiet. All I could hear was the soft crackle of the fire and the faint hum of insects. Then it came again. A low whistle from somewhere in the trees. 3 notes, almost like someone was calling for a dog. Except it wasn't any tune I recognised. It had this strange, broken rhythm to it. Evan called out, probably just the wind, but it didn't sound like the wind. The notes were too deliberate. Mia said she thought she saw movement between the trees, but when I shined my flashlight, there was nothing there. No animals, no branches moving, just darkness. We tried to shake it off. Eventually, one by one, we turned in for the night. That's when it happened. It must have been around 3 in the morning when I woke up. The air in the tent was freezing. My breath was fogging up in front of me. I could hear the trees swaying, the occasional snap of a branch, and then I heard it. A faint, steady sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from outside the tent. At first I thought maybe it was just a branch hitting the fabric, but it was too rhythmic, too deliberate. I held my breath, straining to listen. Tap, tap, tap. Then a pause. And after a few seconds, the sound changed. Knock, knock, knock. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't random anymore. It was like someone was knocking right at the entrance of the tent. I whispered for Evan, but his sleeping bag was empty. So was Mia's. I froze, scanning the dark, my mind racing. Were they outside? Had they gone to the fire pit? The knocking stopped, and then a voice. Low, raspy, so quiet I almost thought it was in my head. Can I come in? I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The voice was right outside, just inches away through the thin layer of fabric. It sounded like an old man, but there was something off about it. The tone was wrong, like someone trying to sound human, but missing the mark. Then all at once, I heard footsteps, heavy ones, circling the tent. Leaves crunching, slow, deliberate steps. Whatever it was walking around me. I sat there, clutching my flashlight, too scared to even turn it on. And then suddenly, everything stopped. The footsteps, the wind, the forest, dead silence. I must have stayed like that for at least half an hour before I finally worked up the courage to unzip the tent and peek out. The fire was out. The other tent was still zipped shut, but something was hanging from one of the branches near the campsite. At first I thought it was a piece of fabric. Maybe one of our towers had blown up there. But when I got closer, I saw it wasn't cloth. It was a strip of animal hide, still wet, and carved into it, in deep, jagged letters, were 3 words. Stay with us. Morning came too slow. When the first light hit the campsite, it didn't feel like morning at all. Just a weaker kind of darkness. The trees were shrouded in fog, so thick it looked like smoke, curling between the trunks and swallowing our tents from sight. Evan and Mia were sitting by the fire pit when I crawled out of my tent. They both looked pale, like they hadn't slept either. Tyler was still out cold, snoring faintly, oblivious. Evan looked at me and said, "You were up last night, right?" I hesitated. "Yeah, why?" He pointed to the edge of the clearing. There were more footprints, fresh ones, leading right up to the campsite, and stopping less than a foot from where Mia had been sleeping. The prints were deep, like whoever, or whatever, made them was heavy, barefoot, and there was too many to count, like a crowd had been walking circles around us all night. Mia said she thought she heard a whispering sometime after 3 a.m. She didn't want to wake anyone because she thought she was dreaming, but now she wasn't sure. That's when I told them about the knocking and the voice that asked to come in, and about the thing hanging from the branch. Evan didn't say much, just stared into the fog like he was trying to process it. Tyler woke up halfway through and laughed, saying I was trying to freak them out, but I could see it in his face. He was scared too. We decided to pack up a few hours early and head out, but then we started following the path we came in on. It wasn't there anymore. The trail was gone. We tried every direction, north, west, even downhill toward where we thought the road should have been. But it was like the forest had rearranged itself overnight. Every turn led back to the same clearing, the same dead fire pit, the same pines looming like prison bars. Evan climbed one of the smaller hills to look for the car, but all he saw was trees stretching endlessly in every direction. No road, no tire tracks, not even a sign of where we'd parked. By noon we stopped talking. There was this tension between us, not anger, exactly, but something worse, like we all knew we were in trouble but didn't want to admit it. That's when we heard it again, the whistle. 3 notes, same broken pattern as before, but this time it was closer, too close. We froze. Scanning the trees, it was impossible to tell where it was coming from. The sound seemed to bounce between the trunks, echoing from all sides. Then it stopped. A beat later, something whistled back from deeper in the woods,
Answering it, Evan grabbed the hatchet from the firewood pile and said, "We're leaving. Now." We started walking fast, heading in what we hoped was the right direction. The fog only got thicker. The trees looked identical, repeating, like we were walking through a loop. And then, we came across something that made my blood run cold. A fire pit. Still warm, but not ours. There were remnants of burned logs, a few crushed beer cans, same brand we bought, and sitting beside it, a melted plastic flashlight, identical to mine. At first I thought maybe we'd somehow circle back to our own campsite, but then I noticed something carved into one of the nearby trees. It said, "Day 2, still lost." The letters looked old, weathered, like they'd been there for weeks. Tyler stared at it and said someone's messing with us. But the way his voice shook took me, he didn't believe that none of us did. We decided to stay, put until the fog lifted, which was probably the worst decision we could have made. By dusk, the air felt wrong again, heavy, still. Even the birds had stopped. We started another fire, smaller this time, trying not to draw attention. Mia was sitting with her back to the woods, staring into the flames, when she froze. I followed her gaze and saw it. Between the trees, maybe 30 feet away, something was standing there. It wasn't a person. It was too tall. Its arms were too long. Its body almost bending with the bark around it. But what made my skin crawl wasn't its shape. It was the sound it made. The same whistle. But this time, it wasn't coming from its mouth. It was breathing. Each exhale formed that broken tree note tune, like the sound was trapped inside of it, trying to get out. Tyler shouted and threw a rock towards it, and the thing jerked its head, not like a reaction, but like it was copying him, mimicking the movement. Then slowly, it turned and stepped back into the trees. We didn't sleep that night. We just sat there, waiting, listening. Every few minutes we'd hear it again, farther away, then closer, circling us, always whistling. Just before dawn, we heard another sound, Mia's voice, coming from the woods. She was sitting right next to me, but her voice was calling from the dark, just beyond the firelight. "Evan, Tyler, come here." It was perfect. The same tone, same pitch, but her lips weren't moving. Evan stood halfway up before I grabbed his arm. I whispered, "That's not her." The voice called again, and then overlapping with it came another one. Mine, from the same direction, repeating the same thing. "Evan, Tyler, come here." We sat in silence, staring into the trees until sunrise. and then the light finally broke. There were more footprints leading out of the clearing and into the fog. 4 sets, our size, our shoes, but we hadn't moved. We didn't talk much the next morning. None of us knew what to say. We'd all heard voices. We'd all seen the footprints. And every time one of us even mentioned leaving, it was like the woods got quieter, listening. The fog hadn't lifted. If anything, it was worse. It rolled between the trees in thick, slow waves. And the deeper you looked into it, the less you could see. It was like the forest didn't want us to know where we were anymore. Tyler was the first to crack. He started pacing, muttering to himself, saying he was done sitting around waiting for some backwoods psycho to mess with us again. He grabbed the hatchet and said he was going to find the car. Evan tried to stop him, but Tyler wasn't listening. He disappeared into the fog, just like that. We yelled for him until our throats hurt, but the sound barely carried past the clearing. After a while, Evan said we should follow him before he got lost for good. So we packed what we could and marked the trees as we went, carving small X's into the dark with Evan's pocket knife. At least there was a plan, except the marks didn't stay. We noticed it maybe 20 minutes in. The first few X's we'd made were gone. Not faded, not scratched out, gone. The bark was smooth again, like the cuts had healed. That's when we found the trail camera. It was strapped to the pine trunk with an old, rusted band, the kind researchers use for tracking wildlife. The lens was covered in dirt, and there was little red light blinking weakly on the side. We thought maybe it belonged to the park rangers, but when Evan pulled it down and checked the back, he found a memory card inside. We didn't have a laptop, but Mia remembered she had a small camcorder in her bag, something she bought to record parts of the trip. It had an SD card slot that fits perfectly. The footage started with static, flickering black and white lines, faint audio distortion, like someone breathing close to the mic. Then it cut to a shot of the clearing, our clearing, same tents, same fire pit, only we weren't in it. The footage looked like it had been taken days ago. The trees looked greener, the fire newer. The camera zoomed slowly towards the tents, and for a moment, I thought maybe someone had just filmed another group camping here before us. Then the first face appeared. It was me, standing beside the tent. But it wasn't from this trip. The clothes I was wearing, I didn't own them anymore. The jacket, the jeans, everything looked a little off. Like an older version of me. Maybe a year or two. And I wasn't moving right. The footage showed me turning towards the camera, but my head kept moving a second slower than my body, like the fate was struggling to keep up. Evan slammed the camcorder shut and muttered, "What the hell is it?" Mia wanted to delete it right away, but I told her to wait. We needed to see the rest. So we kept watching. The video jumped ahead to nighttime. The same clearing, only darker. There was a small fire still burning, and one of the tents was missing. Something was moving just outside the circle of light. Tall, thin, dragging its feet like it didn't know how to walk. The camera panned slowly, and for a split second we saw its face, or something close to its face. It was smooth, no features, just a blank surface where a face should have been. But it had a mouth, or the idea of one, stretching, open wider and wider, until the static swallowed but it had a mouth. But it had a mouth, or the idea of one, stretching open wider and wider until the static swallowed the frame. Evan stopped the playback and ejected the card. He threw it into the woods. None of us said a word after that. We kept walking, hoping to find Tyler. But instead, we found something else. A second camera, this one newer, mounted higher in a tree and pointed down at the trail. When we climbed up to check it, there was another memory card inside, labelled Day 3. The same day it was right then. That's when Mia whispered, "It's recording us." We turned. Sure enough, the little red light was blinking again. And as Evan reached up to grab it, the light flickered. Once, twice, and went out. The air went dead silent. Then we heard it. The whistle. Faint at first, somewhere far off. Then closer. Coming from both sides this time. Evan pulled the hatchet from his belt, spinning in circles. "Show yourself," he yelled. But the whistling only got louder. Layers of it, echoing through the trees, like dozens of people trying to match the same broken tune. Mia screamed, pointing behind us. I turned and saw movement through the fog. Dozens of shapes, all standing still. Tall, thin silhouettes just beyond the tree line. Each one holding something in their hands, glinting faintly into the dim light. I thought it was weapons, but when the fog shifted, I realized that they were holding cameras, dozens of old camcorders, phones, tripods, all pointed straight at us, all recording. Then one by one, the red lights started blinking in sync, tiny dots glowing like eyes in the fog. That's when the whistling stopped, and a voice, not one of ours, said, "Day 4. We didn't move for a long time. The woods were silent again, completely still, except for the faint clicking of the camcorders out there in the fog. You could hear their old mechanical shutters adjusting focus, like insects chittering in the dark. Finally, Evan whispered, "We run on 3. He counted under his breath. 1, 2, 3. We bolted, Branches clawed at our clothes as we tore through the trees. I didn't know where we were going, only that I had to move. Behind us, the red lights flared to life again, hundreds of them, flickering like embers. And underneath it all, that damned whistle started again. Only this time, it was behind us and ahead of us at the same time. We must have run for an hour before we found another clearing. It looked almost identical to ours. Same shape, same circle of rocks, where a fire might have accepted. There was no smoke, no tents, nothing, just a single object sitting in the centre of the grass. A camcorder. It was on recording. Evan kicked it over, but when it landed on its side, the screen stayed lit, showing us, right then, right there, 3 people standing in a clearing, staring down at the camera. But the longer we looked, the more wrong it got. The footage wasn't quite matching what we were doing. Our movements lagged, our expressions were different. And then in the playback, the other me looked up, not at the lens, but straight into my eyes. That's when I blacked out. When I came to, the sun was rising again. At least I thought it was. But everything looked the same. Same fog, same grey light bleeding through the trees. The only difference was the fire pit. It was back. Our tents were back too. Even Tyler's backpack sitting neatly where he'd left it. Mia was kneeling beside the fire pit, staring at something in the ashes. It was a bone. Small, white, clean, human. She didn't say a word, just stared, her face hollow. Evan looked around, breathing hard. This isn't right. He kept muttering, this isn't right. We were just... He stopped mid-sentence, then said, "What day is it?" I checked my phone. It was dead. Same as before. But when I hit the side button for just a second, the date flickered on the screen before it shut off again. August 12th. That didn't make sense. We'd arrived on August 9th. We'd been out there maybe 2 nights, 3 tops. But now it was August 12th. We'd lost a whole day. Mia said maybe the phone glitched. But when Evan checked his watch, the hands were spinning. Not fast, not random, just turning slowly forward like time itself was skipping. We decided to retrace our steps, try again to find the road. The forest looked the same in every direction, but we picked one and went. About 20 minutes. We saw something up ahead through the fog. Movements, we thought it was Tyler. But as we got closer, we realised we were walking towards ourselves. 3 figures, walking the opposite direction through the mist. Same clothes, same backpacks, even the same limp Evan had been from twisting his ankle earlier. For a second I thought it was hallucinating, but then the other me looked up and I smiled. That broke us. We ran. When we finally stopped gasping for air, we'd reached another clearing. This one was smaller, ringed with stones, and in the centre on a stump was an old notebook. The pages were yellowed, edges curling. The cover said Ranger Log Whistler Pines. Evan opened it carefully. Most of the pages were blank, but the last few had writing, shaky and desperate handwriting. It read, Day 1, 4 campers arrive. Day 2, whistling in the woods. Day 3, the copies appeared. Day 4, 1 left. Repeat. Then underneath that, a new line, carved deep into the paper with something sharp. If you read this, you're already on day 4. We all just stood there, frozen. Mia started crying quietly. Evan slammed the book shut and threw it into the fire pit. But the pages didn't burn, they just turned black and reformed. I saw the same words appear again, letter by letter, like something invisible was rewriting them. That's when we heard footsteps, soft, slow, coming from every direction. We turned and saw ourselves again. At least, versions of us, dozens of them, stepping out of the fog. Some looked terrified, some were bleeding, some were smiling, but they all had our faces. And every one of them was whispering in perfect unison, Day 4 never ends. Mia screamed and bolted, disappearing into the mist. Evan ran after her. I stood there for a few seconds, frozen, before doing the same. But no matter how far I went, I kept ending back at the same clearing. The same notebook on the stump, the same line etched deeper than before. If you read this, you're already on day 5. When I woke up, the forest was silent again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt hollow, like the sound had been scraped out of the air and all that was left was emptiness. My head was pounding, my clothes were soaked with dew. I sat up, half expecting us to see Evan and Mia sleeping nearby. But the camp was empty. No tents, no backpacks, just the burned outline of the fire pit and the same blackened notebook on the stump, waiting for me. The date on the first page had changed. It now said, Day 5, only 1 left. The words weren't written in ink anymore. They were seared into the paper, like someone had pressed a hot knife through it. I shouted for the others until my throat burned, but the forest just swallowed my voice. Then I started walking. For hours I wandered in circles. At least it felt like hours. The light never changed. The sky stayed the same, dull grey. No sun, no direction. Every tree looked identical. Every root twisted in the same pattern, like the forest was copying and pasting itself around me. At some point, I found a piece of fabric snagged on a branch. Mia's jacket. The sleeve was torn clean off, and the fabric was damp with something dark. Next to it, half buried in the moss, was her phone. It was dead, of course, but when I pressed the power button for just a second, the screen flashed, a video file, time-stamped tomorrow. I hit play. The video started with static, then a shaky shot of the woods. Someone, maybe Mia, was running, breathing hard, branches snapping, heavy footsteps behind her. She turned the camera towards her face for a split second, eyes wide, mouth open, screaming something. But there was no sound, just the whistle. That same broken croon. Then the camera turned, showing a figure stepping out of the trees, tall, still, blank face. And behind it, another one, and another, until the whole screen filled with them. All perfectly still, all turning their heads towards the lens at the same time. The last frame before it cut out was me, standing behind her, expressionless, eyes black, whistling. I dropped the phone and ran until my legs gave out. When I fell, I hit something hard. Metal. I brushed away the dirt and saw the glint of red paint. It was the hood of Evan's car, buried up to the windows in the ground, like the forest had swallowed it whole. Inside I could see shapes in the foggy glass, outlines of people sitting in the seats. I called their names, pounding on the door. No one moved. Then I saw it, scratched into the windshield from the inside. One word: run. I backed away, tripping over a root. The ground underneath was soft, spongy, and when I looked down, I realized it wasn't soil. It was hair. Human hair. Dozens of strands, woven into the dirt like grass, stretching out in every direction. That's when I heard it again. The whistle. Close. So close I could feel it vibrating in my chest. I turned, and there they were. Evan, Mia, Tyler, all standing at the edge of the clearing, half shrouded in fog. Their eyes were hollow, their skin pale, greyish, like wax figures left in the sun too long. They didn't blink, they didn't breathe. They just stared at me. Mia tilted her head, her neck creaking like old wood. And in that voice, the same broken rasp I heard outside the tent that first night, she whispered, "Stay with us." I stumbled backward, screaming, throwing anything I could. Rocks, branches, whatever I found. But they didn't move. They just stood there, whispering in unison. That same phrase over and over, until it turned into something else. Day 5 never ends. That's when I ran. I don't know how long or which direction. I remember the trees thinning, the light getting brighter, and then suddenly I was on asphalt. The road, the ranger station just a few hundred feet ahead. I must have passed out right there on the pavement, because the next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed. A ranger found me, wandering near the station at sunrise, clothes torn, dehydrated, covered in scratches. They said I was lucky to be alive. I told them my friends were still out there. They organised a search party that same day, but they never found them. No tents, no campfire, no car, not even footprints. It was like we'd never been there at all. The rangers said Whistler Pines was officially closed years ago, after a forest fire destroyed the trails. But that's not true. I saw the signs, the old campsites, the cameras. Someone or something had been keeping that place alive. And the worst part, a few weeks after I got out of the hospital, a package showed up at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a memory card. When I plugged it into my laptop, there was one video file. The thumbnail showed me standing in the woods, looking straight at the camera. The file name was Day One. If you ever hear someone talk about camping near Whistler Pines, if you ever see a sign for it or hear someone whistle those 3 broken notes, turn around. Don't look for it. Don't go near it. Because it's still out there, watching, recording, waiting for the next group to come along. And if you ever wake up in the middle of the night and hear someone gently knocking on your tent, don't answer. Just pray it isn't whispering your name.
Let me tell you a story about something that I still don't understand. The fire crackled, throwing wild, twitching shadows against the trunks of the towering pines. We were 6 in total. Me, Riley, Tom, Jess, Marcus, and Ellie. Old friends, reunited after years apart, trying to relive the camping trips of our teenage days. Only now, the forest seemed different, older, hungrier. The night had fallen fast, too fast. The air smelled of wet bark and something else. Iron, maybe. The kind of scent that doesn't belong to trees. Riley was telling one of his trademark ghost stories. His flashlight under his chin for effect. It was the local one, the Hollow Man. A figure that supposedly appeared when the wind stopped. No footsteps, no face, just a silhouette in the mist. They sat. He comes for those who don't listen when the forest tells them to leave. Jess laughed it off, tossing another log into the fire. The sparks shot upward, like fireflies escaping the earth. But when the flames rose, for just a second, I thought I saw someone. Only just the smoke and the flicker. Still, my skin prickled. Later, as we zipped ourselves into our tents, the forest began to whisper. The wind moved strangely, not rustling through the leaves, but between them, like a voice trapped in the canopy. Then, a scream, sharp, close, then silent. We scrambled out with our flashlights, shouting for Marcus. His tent was open, his sleeping bag torn halfway. Out, his boots were still there, untouched. No footprints, no sign of struggle, just a long, wet trail of pine needles leading deeper into the forest. And the wind had stopped. We followed the trail with our flashlights trembling in our hands. The beam barely reached 10 feet ahead. Beyond that, the forest swallowed everything. The air was thick, almost wet with fog. Every step felt like it was sinking into something alive. Ellie kept whispering Marx's name, her voice shaky. No response. Tom tried to sound rational. Maybe he went to, look for firewood, he said. But even he didn't believe it. His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. Then we found it. Marx's flashlight, half buried in the mud, still on, its beam pointing at a tree trunk. The bark was stripped bare, deep grooves running down like claw marks and carved into the firewood. In a trembling hand were 3 words. It follows sound. We all froze. No one spoke. Not even the forest dared to move. Then a branch snapped behind us. Riley spun his light towards the sound. Nothing, just fog. Another snap. Closer. Ellie's breath hitched. It's moving around us, she whispered. Tom shouted, Marcus, is that you? The woods answered with silence. And then whispers, soft, inhuman, like dozens of voices murmuring under the soil. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath. We turned back towards camp, but the fire was gone. No smoke, no embers, nothing but empty clearing. Our tents were there, forest felt rearranged, like we'd stepped into the same place in a different world. Then faintly, from the direction of Marcus's tent, came the sound of breathing. Slow, wet, right behind the fabric. Ellie took a step forward. "Don't," I hissed, but she pulled the flap open, and inside, sitting upright in Marcus's sleeping bag, was a shape wearing his clothes. The skin was wrong, stretched too thin, and it was smiling. Then it whispered in Marcus's voice, "Why didn't you listen?" Ellie screamed, stumbling backward, her flashlight hitting the ground and rolling away. The figure in the tent didn't move. It just sat there, head tilted, grin splitting impossibly wide. Riley grabbed her arm and pulled her back as Tom zipped the tent shut in one panicked motion. "What the hell was that?" he shouted, voice cracking into something between terror and disbelief. But before I could answer, we heard it again, that whisper. This time, closer, all around us. It wasn't just one voice, it was hundreds. Layers of murmurs, men, women, children, all blending into a language that wasn't quite human. The words weren't clear, but the tone was unmistakable. Mocking. Jess clutched my arm. "It's copying us," she whispered. "Those aren't echoes." We stood in a circle, flashlight shaking, our shadows warping across the trees like ink bleeding through paper. And then the forest went silent. Not a breeze, not a single leaf moving. Even the insects had stopped. That's when I remembered Riley's story, the local legend. When the wind stops, the hollow man appeared. Tom laughed nervously. "You guys are seriously freaking me out." He didn't finish. Something tall and thin moved between the trees, faster than our eyes could track. Our but if for just a fraction of a second, a silhouette shaped like a man, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its heads hollow. Not missing, but sunken inward, like the face had been poured into itself. Riley whispered, "Don't move." But Ellie was crying, sobbing. The sound echoed through the forest like a flare in the dark. The thing turned, and then the whispers screamed. All at once, the air filled with noise. A hurricane of voices, laughter, and sobbing, layered over each other. Our lights flickered violently. I grabbed Ellie's hand. Run. We tore through the trees, branches slashing at our hands and faces. Our breath clouding in the cold air. I could hear something moving behind us, impossibly fast, gliding through the forest floor like smoke. We reached the creek, the one that wound past the edge of the camp. Riley stumbled into the water, gasping. It doesn't cross running water. Old legends said that. But when I turned to look, I saw it standing on the opposite bank, still watching. The water between us churned with mist. Then I realized something horrible. It wasn't one shape. It was 6. Each one shaped like us. Each one standing in the same positions we were. And one of them, mine, was smiling back at me. For a moment, none of us breathed. The sound of the creek rushing between us was the only thing keeping reality tethered together. The figures across the water mirrored us perfectly. Our postures, our fear, even the trembling of our flashlights. Except they didn't move with us. They moved just after. A half-second delay, like watching yourself on a broken screen. Ellie whispered, What are those things?" Riley's voice shook. "They're us. Or they're what it wants us to think we are. Jess pointed. Look. Yours is smiling. She was right. My reflection's mouth curled wider, twitching unnaturally, splitting the skin around its lips until dark liquid dripped down its chin. It lifted a finger, my finger, and pressed it to its hollowed face. The forest felt silent again. Behind us, a low groan echoed through the trees, long, deep, and wet, like the forest itself was breathing. Tom stepped back. We need to get out of here, right now. We followed the creek downstream, praying it would lead to the trail. The fog clung to the water, swallowing our legs as we moved. I kept glancing behind us, half expecting those reflections to follow, but they didn't. Not exactly. Every time I looked, they were closer to the water's edge. It was Jess who first noticed the change. The moon's gone, she whispered. She was right. The light filtering through the pines had vanished. The sky completely black. Even our flashlight seemed weaker, their beams struggling to pierce the air. Ellie stumbled. Suddenly, something grabbed me. We turned our lights to her leg. Nothing there. But her jeans were wet, darker than the creek water. A handprint, muddy, clawed. She started to hyperventilate. It's under the water. The creek exploded upward. A pale hand shot out, grabbing Riley's ankle and dragging him down. The splash swallowed his scream. We rushed to him. But when the water cleared, all that remained was his flashlight, rolling lazily in the current. Ellie began to sob uncontrollably. Jess tried to pull her up the bar, but the ground beneath them caved in like a sinkhole. Roots snapped, earth shifted. I grabbed Tom's arm, pulling us both higher. Don't stop. Run. The forest ahead warped in the darkness. Trees twisted toward us, branches like arms. Reaching down, the whispering started again. But this time, it wasn't random. It was saying our names. And underneath it all, faint but growing louder, a simple voice called from the creek behind us. Guys, it's me, Riley. We turned. Riley stood ankle deep in the water, drenched, shaking, but smiling. Only something was wrong. The water around his legs wasn't rippling, and his reflection wasn't moving at all. Riley, Ellie's voice cracked. She took a step forward before I could stop her. He smiled wider, his teeth too, white in the dark. It's okay. I'm fine. You don't have to run anymore. The way he said it. Too calm. Too smooth. Sent a chill crawling up my spine. Riley was always the loud one, the first to panic. Not this. Mannequin version standing perfectly in the current. Tom whispered, "That's not him." Riley's head twitched towards Tom. The sound of the cracking bones echoing softly. "Tom," he said, "you shouldn't say that." And then he moved, not walked, slid. His body glided through the water towards us, the surface never breaking. His movements didn't ripple, didn't splash. It was like he was a reflection trying to step out of the mirror. Jess screamed. We ran. Branches whipped across our faces as we tore through the forest. I could hear myself. I could hear something behind us, fast, snapping through the trees like the world was folding in on itself. Every time we looked back, we caught flashes. The glint of teeth, a hollowed face flickering in the dark. Sometimes Riley's, sometimes Marx's, sometimes my own. Ellie tripped, tumbling down a slope into a hollow. We scrambled after her and found ourselves in an old clearing. A half-collapsed cabin hidden under vines and rot. Inside, I shouted. We pushed through the warped door and slammed it shut behind us. The smell of the damp wood and mold hit like a wave. Our flashlights cut across the room. Old furniture, covered dust, claw marks etched into the walls. And in the center, something worse. A circle of bones, human, small, burned black. Tom gagged. Jesus Christ. Ellie was sobbing. We have to get out. Please, we have to. But Jess froze, pointing at the wall. Look. Carved into the wood above the fireplace, faint under the grime, were words written over and over again in the same jagged hand. The forest remembers its own. A sound came from outside, slow footsteps circling the cabin. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Tom peered through a crack in the wall, flashlight trembling. It's Riley, he whispered. He's standing right there. Don't look, I hissed, but it was too late. Riley's face appeared in the gap, pressed flat against the wood. Eyes black, smile stretching ear to ear. Let me in, he crooned, voice distorted like something echoing from underwater. It's cold out here. The door creaked once, twice. The handle turned. Tom grabbed a broken chair leg and raised it like a weapon. If he comes through that door, I swear to God. Bang. Something hit the wall hard. Then another bang. The whole cabin shook. The door hinges groaned, splinters flying. Ellie screamed. He's breaking in. And then silence. We held our breath. Nothing. Then a whisper right behind me. Why are you hiding from yourself? I spun. There, in the faint glow of my flashlight, stood me, pale, blood around the mouth, eyes hollow, smiling. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My own face, pale, bloodied, hollow-eyed, stood there, feet in front of me, illuminated by the weak beam of my trembling flashlight. It smiled with my mouth, a twitching, broken imitation of what a smile should be. Tom swung the chair leg. It passed straight through the thing, like slicing smoke. The air rippled, and the copy of me flickered, gone. Then back, now grinning wider. Jess screamed. It's copying us again. It's trying to. Her words choked off. We turned just in time to see her reflection step out of the shadow beside the fireplace, moving in eerie synchronization. Every blink, every twitch, identical, except the reflection's eyes were black as tar. The whispers started again, louder this time, echoing from inside the walls. Join us, join us, join us. Ellie clutched her head. It's in my mind. It's in my head. Make it stop. I grabbed her shoulders. Ellie, listen to me. Don't. Then the floor gave way. The boards splintered beneath us, and we dropped into darkness. Dust and rot filled the air. I hit the ground hard. Dirt, stone, and something brittle that snapped under my hand. Bone. We were in the basement. Riley's voice floated down from above, warped and slow. Don't hide. The forest remembers. We scrambled for our flashlights. Mine flickered to life, casting a weak circle of light across the floor. Bones, hundreds of them, some small, some not. And on the far wall, scrawled in something dark and half faded, was a single word repeated over and over. Remember. Jess sobbed quietly. Tom knelt beside the bones, hands shaking. These are all people. What the hell happened here? I looked closer at the carvings on the wall. Some were names, dozens of them, carved deep, but the last one was unfinished. The letters jagged halfway through. R-I-L. Riley. Before I could process it, a sound echoed through the hole above us. A dragging, wet shuffle. And then Riley's voice, calm, closer now. I remember now. We looked up, just as something pale and and Twister dropped down into the darkness with us. It wasn't Riley anymore. Not even close. The shape hit the ground with a wet thud. Our flashlights scattered across the dirt, beams slicing through the dark in trembling arcs. For one disorienting second, I saw a pale arm twitch, then another, before the thing rose slowly, unfolding itself like a spider stretching after sleep. Riley, Ellie whimpered, but that thing only tilted its head, joints cracking, water dripping from its face. No, not water. The smell hit next. Copper, rot, and soil. Blood mixed with mud. Tom grabbed my sleeve, whispering, "It's not him. It's not anyone." The creature's chest heaved once, like it was trying to breathe through lungs that didn't belong to it. Then it spoke, a perfect imitation of Riley's voice, overlaid with hundreds of others. "You came back to us." The lights flickered. Jess screamed as the beam caught the thing's face, or what was left of it. The skin looked stitched together, pieces of Riley, Marcus, and someone else I didn't recognize. A patchwork of memories given flesh. The whispers grew louder, and for the first time, I realized they weren't coming from the air. They were rising from the ground. The bones around us began to shift, one by one. Skulls rolled over in the dirt, empty eye sockets turning toward the sound. "Run," I yelled. We bolted for the stairs, but the rotted steps crumbled under Tom's weight. He fell backward into the pit of bones, his flashlight spinning wildly before going out with a crunch. Jess and I grabbed Ellie and scrambled up the remnants of the ladder. My heart felt like it would burst through my ribs. Behind us, the whispers turned into screams. Not words. Memories. "Don't leave me. It hurts. Why didn't you listen?" Each voice sounded like someone we'd known. We burst through the trapdoor into the cabin above, slamming it shut behind us. Ellie collapsed, sobbing, clutching her knees. Jess pressed her back against the wall, hyperventilating. Then, the trapdoor knocked. Once once, twice. We froze. It wasn't the creature. It was Tom's voice. Guys, please. It's me. Ellie moved for the latch, tears streaming down her face. I grabbed her wrist. That's not him. She shook her head violently. You don't know that. Before I could stop her, she pulled open the door. Tom's face stared up at us. Pale, eyes wide, as something dragged him back into the dark with an inhumane scream. The trap door slammed shut on its own. We backed away slowly, our flashlights flickering again. That's when Jess whispered, "We're not supposed to leave." I turned to her. What? She pointed at the wall. The carvings, the ones that said, "The forest remembers its own," were changing. New words burned themselves into the wood, one letter at a time. Those who enter must stay. And underneath, in fresh, dripping red, were our names. The air in the cabin grew thick, warm, almost wet, like the forest was breathing through the cracks in the walls. The words carved into the wood glistened fresh and red. Those who enter must stay. Jess began to laugh. The kind of laugh that's too close. It's crying. It's writing our names. It's writing our names. I grabbed her by the shoulders. Jess, look at me. We're getting out of here. But Ellie was staring at the dark. Her voice came out flat. There's no out. It's already taken us. Outside, the whispers turned to chanting. Hundreds of voices, moving in perfect rhythm. They circled the cabin like a ritual. I looked through a crack in the boards and froze. The forest was alive. The trees were moving, bending inward. Their roots crawling across the ground toward us like veins. And standing among them were shapes, familiar ones. Marcus, Riley, Tom, and us. All 6 of us, reflected in the hollow. twisted mockeries. Each one was smiling. Then the chanting stopped. The door creaked open on its own. A wind swept through the cabin, but it wasn't cold. It was pulling. The air itself tugged at us, dragging dust, leaves, and pieces of the floor towards the open threshold. The hollow man stood there, taller now, his limbs stretching into the dark. His chest was open, and inside it, things moved. Faces, voices, memories, hours. Jess screamed and lunged forward with a shard of wood, stabbing at him. But it passed right through. The air rippled, and for a heartbeat, the hollow man looked just like her. Then, like me. Then, like all of us at once. Ellie whispered, "He's not real. None of this is real." The hollow man turned his hollow face toward her. "Then why can't I remember you?" The wind intensified, pulling harder. I grabbed Ellie's hand, but she was slipping away, her body dragging toward that impossible dark chest. Jess tried to hold on too, but the air swallowed her scream. And then all at once, silence. The wind stopped. The chanting faded. None of this was real. None of this ever even happened. I was by myself. I was alone. The cabin was empty, except for the carvings where our names had been. Now there were 6 perfect etchings, the letters clean, sharp, final. And underneath them, a new one appeared, burning itself into the wood. It remembers. The forest outside was calm. Birds chirped. The morning light leaked through the windows. It was as if nothing had ever happened. I stumbled outside, dazed, walking through the dew-soaked, clearing toward the creek. No bodies, no blood, except It wasn't moving. It smiled first and whispered, "You stayed." They found my car a week later. Parked at the trailhead. The rangers said no one should have been camping. No one at all. But the 6 of us didn't listen. We should have never camped that deep into Black Hollow. Over the years, many had disappeared. There were too many disappearances. Sometimes, when the wind stops in the middle of the night, I swear I hear them calling from the trees. I swear I hear them calling out my name. Marcus Riley, Marcus Riley, Tom, me, Jess. 6 voices whispering together. The 6 of us remembers. The forest remembers its own